Hello again, folks. Welcome to this recording. So this recording, as you can see, is recording 2, and it is the second part of chapter 1. So please make sure that before you listen to this, you've actually listened to the first recording, as well as consulted the slides for the first part of this chapter. Okay, so what I did is I broke them up into 2 recordings and 2 PowerPoint slides, just to make it a little bit easier, and then it isn't everything in large chunks for you to download and sit through. Please also remember that I have already provided a recording of assessment. So in the recording, I go through the F1 brief and give you guidelines as to how to approach it. Okay, so that recording is also available. All right, so in the last recording, we introduced what we would be doing in Business Management 3, and I iterated that we would be covering strategic management. So that is everything to do with the long-term planning and the high-level planning of a business. So what falls under strategic management? It's decisions like whether a company should expand locally, internationally, whether they should merge with other entities, whether they should retrench, whether they should invest in new business units, or the opposite of that is divest, take money out of business units, etc. So all those high-level decisions that companies make falls under strategic management decisions. And these decisions are only made by senior level management, board of directors, etc. So unless you start your own business, it will be quite a while before you get in your career to a stage where you start to operate at the strategic, or rather, your input for strategic management is required. Okay, so as I said in a few minutes ago, so who handles strategic management? So like I said, it's typically very senior level people who are not responsible for particular, department or whatever. They take responsibility for the enterprise as a whole, and they work quite closely with the board of directors. So the board of directors are the people that appoint the CEO. They have meetings with the company. They look at the company's strategy going forward. What are the plans for the coming 5 years? How is the company going to achieve that? And unfortunately, in our state-owned entities, we see a lot of issues with strategic management. So there isn't sufficient long-term planning. The board of directors keep on changing, that sort of thing. But we'll discuss more about that during our live sessions and also through our discussion board. Okay, but I want you to be aware of who are the people involved in strategic management, and for you to start thinking about, has an entity like Eskom, have they done enough for strategic management? We are into 14 years of load shedding. Could this have been improved, the situation, by better strategic management? So I want you to think about that. Okay, so what are the building blocks? So in the previous recording, I talked about the strategic management process. Okay, sorry, these are a little bit tiny. So if you just touch on it, you'll be able to see. So what makes up strategic management? So first of all, in chapter 2, we're going to get into vision and mission, and you'll see that vision and mission is quite prominently assessed in the F1. So in a nutshell, a vision is basically where the company wants to be, and then a mission is what it does and its statement of intent. The next step then is, once you have a vision and a mission, formulation of long-term goals and objectives. So what goals and objectives are required to meet that vision and mission? Okay. Then the next point is about strategy formulation and selection. Oh, sorry, I missed this out. Yeah, strategy formulation and selection. So before we get there, we've now got our vision, our mission, We've decided what goals we need to have, which will help us to meet that vision and mission. And again, when we go through the chapter on vision and mission, I'll give you examples of companies who have had, what are their visions, what are some of their goals. We look at companies like Apple, Samsung, and any other examples, okay, that are relevant. Then a firm has to develop strategies in line with that vision and mission. And obviously, then once you've developed it, you've got to implement it. Once you implement something, you always have to say, well, what worked and what didn't? And that ultimately is evaluation of the strategy. So in the first recording and in part 1 of chapter 1, I talked about the process of strategic management. And now we talk about, well, what are some of the building blocks? What are the elements of strategic management? So it's quite similar to what we have discussed. Okay, so like I said, when I started this recording, who's in charge of it? So if the organizational structure was represented in the form of a pyramid, at the bottom of the pyramid, you have functional responsibility. So perhaps you work in a particular function. Let's say you work in finance, and you are a manager and you're responsible for making sure that accounts receivable. So your function is about within finance. Your function is you are the manager of a team who are managing accounts receivable, for example. So that's your responsibility, and you can work out a strategy for that department. Then we have a higher level strategy, maybe the finance department. That's a business level, and they may have strategies. We will call that business strategy. Then what we're focusing on for the rest of this year is senior management who are responsible for corporate strategy. So that's our focus. Last year, when we did business management to supply chain management, we were kind of looking at this level of strategy, business level. Okay. Right, so in conclusion, this chapter then discusses the advantages as well as the benefits of strategic management. So I didn't retype them here. It's quite easy for you to look at on page 24 and change that, 25 of the prescribed textbook. Now, once again, you'll see this in the F1, where you have to discuss the benefits and advantages. But once again, if you give a theoretical answer, you don't get any marks. You have to be able to discuss the benefits and advantages to a given firm or context. All right. Okay, so in conclusion, we have now completed chapter 1. There will be discussions that I will upload on Call Campus, which will get you thinking about elements of this chapter. And that's where you can respond, you can discuss, and we can have peer-to-peer learning. We'll also have a live Zoom session at some point, details to be confirmed, where we can have interaction and discussion and unpack this theory. All right, so please make sure you do go through the work, you start thinking about it, and you also look at the F1 brief. All right, chat you soon.